This is a video that will be discussing the upcoming essay, the first essay that you're writing. I'm going to cover some of the major details over argumentative writing, some of the key points that you should have already read and gone through when you've looked at the writing process, Unit 1. And then we'll look specifically at the topic for the upcoming essay. It's due in about 2 weeks. The date is set as the 27th, which is Friday. But the window actually stays open all the way through that Monday, the 30th of September. So as we're looking at the writing process, of course, hopefully you've gone through some of these. This PowerPoint is about 40-something slides, but just a couple of main ones I want to go over with you very quickly. Is that, of course, writing, as defined by the dictionaries, really isn't very correct. First off, it's not always on paper anymore. In fact, this writing you're seeing here has never been on paper. This was constructed as a PowerPoint and is strictly on a screen. The Merriam-Webster dictionary describes it as something written, which is, of course, not how you define any term. You never use the same term to define it. So written and writing, using the term written, just sort of assumes that you know what write means. So that's not quite how it should be. Instead, this definition, a little lengthier, a little more complex, but also tries to be a little more exact. It's a form of communication, not the only form. But communication means the transference of information from one party to another, the imparting or interchange of thoughts, opinions, information. That is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary defining communication. So writing, as a form of communication, uses a codified symbol system, which has signs with described meanings. You learned those when you were very young. You learned the alphabet. You learned about other signs as well, and they are a learnable, transferable language system. So you recognize that what we call the letter A, such as this, has other ascribed meanings to it. It can only be A, but it can be ah or ah, depending upon how it's being used. So, but that's learnable and transferable in our language system. This language system will follow rules of a grammar, so that the use and meanings of the symbols have been encoded into this grammar, a system that allows in for structure and development. That's what grammars do. And these symbols then are recorded on a surface in some graphic, visible form. So that it achieves the purpose to, you can't see the entire slide here unless I have to try to see if I can get it to show. It doesn't always show up here. If you download the PowerPoint, it will show. So I'll just go ahead and do that. To express, to persuade, to inform, to entertain. So this is basically what you wind up with. And again, unless you downloaded the PowerPoint, which I'm about to do for you. There's the full slide on that. I'm about to entertain, to persuade. And this is really what it comes down to. Writing is hard. And it truly is. It's a challenge with what you have to do. And again, it talks about some of the challenges. If you download the entire PowerPoint, you can actually see all the phrasing. But we'll go off of that for right now. Again, I just want you to keep in mind that writing is going to be a challenging process. It's just not something you sit down and do very quickly. It's going to require detail and intent. It does require critical thinking. Hopefully you looked at this PowerPoint as well. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and download it as well because it also gets cut off. Again, this was a slideshow that was done by the, you can see, the Walker Center for Academic Excellence. So the idea about critical thinking, which you have to apply to your argumentative essay, is purposeful, it's organized, helps us to make informed decisions, it asks questions, and comes up with answers to those. And so it has to be productive. It goes beyond just observing and recalling facts. Instead, takes those facts and offers comments about them to develop a particular perspective. You have to gather information. You have to evaluate that evidence and use it to make decisions, and then of course apply it so that you're showing what the views are. We'll skip over this part. But again, thinking critically is going to be important. Evaluating other people's ideas, reading those articles, and recognizing what those are saying, and then using those to apply to the points that you're trying to make. And again, hopefully you were able to go through that PowerPoint earlier. And I apologize for some of you, the argumentative essay had an extra little comment in here. That was one that was intended for, it was a variation on this form that was used for a class several years ago, and the wrong one was uploaded. This is one that you should have had. Again, same ideas. This is a suggestive format of how you can structure your essay. Your introduction will consist of 1, maybe 2 paragraphs. Typically, 1 paragraph can work for the length of essay we're looking at, but occasionally you may need 2. And the purpose of that introduction is to set up and to state your claim, the thesis that expresses the point you're trying to support. It should have any background information that may be needed. If it's going to be too lengthy for background information, then use that background information to form a separate paragraph. What you do have to have is a presentation of the issue that is being discussed, an explanation of it, and then your claim at the end, your thesis, which takes a side on the topic and offers reasons why that side is appropriate. The background may have to use some key terms if you need to define something. It may want to look at certain theories and offer a commentary about the different views that have been offered, and then going on from there. And then you move into this handout called Supporting Evidence, Paragraph 1. You may have heard it called Body Paragraph 1. But what you want to do is you're using this first paragraph of the body, or supporting evidence paragraph, to prove your argument, to offer details that apply to the approach you're taking, the sides you're supporting. It can be 1 paragraph, but it could be more. You start with a topic sentence. Every paragraph should have a topic sentence that introduces what that paragraph will specifically discuss. And it says here the one item, one fact, one detail, one example that you are going to present in this paragraph so that your claim of your paper topic will be better understood. You may have to explain some details in there of the topic sentence, but then you will definitely introduce evidence. You cannot argue without evidence. The evidence has to be specific, and then it has to be discussed. So you're going to look at very specific details. You will state what the evidence is. You can quote it directly from the source. You can paraphrase it. You can summarize it. But you have to have that supporting evidence, the reasons, the examples, the statistics, quotes from experts in the field, whatever it is that you're using, whatever facts, statistics that you may be drawing from your sources to help support this particular point that is developing your overall thesis. Then you have to explain how the evidence fits. How does this fact, how does this example, what do these statistics indicate? And you have to discuss that in 2, 3, 4 sentences. So this will be the bulk of the paragraph, so that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 6, 7, or 8 sentences per paragraph, and maybe more. Occasionally, the paragraph may need 2. You may have 2 or 3 examples you want to discuss over this one point. Well, then, probably you'll need to develop more than 1 paragraph then, because you'll have to explain each of the examples, how each example connects. You may have several statistics to look at in regard to this one particular point. Well, you have to explain those statistics. So again, you're going to develop that one. Then you're going to offer as it says here, a concluding sentence. You're going to do a summation or a final point about this point and use it to transition to your next idea. And so then you take your next topic sentence, your next fact or key idea, your next reason, and build your next supporting paragraph or body paragraph. So you're going to do it for 2, 3, and 4, however many points you may have. And as it says, repeat above. You do the same thing again. You have a topic sentence. If you have to explain the topic sentence, you provide that explanation. You introduce evidence. You provide the specific evidence, stating what it is. You then examine and explain that evidence to connect it to the point, and connect the point then to your overall perspective. And then you wrap that point up and transition to your next one. The counter argument is simply where you acknowledge a side that is opposite to the one that you're supporting, and then you say but. The counter argument is not a complete examination of the other side of the issue, whichever side you are not supporting. It is just an acknowledgement that there is a point, and then you go but, or however. You offer a counter view about how that particular issue doesn't really pertain or is not very strong. And then your conclusion comes along, where you again are restating your overall claim, but not word for word. Your introduction, your conclusion should not sound the same, because otherwise you're missing one. But what you are trying to do is show that you have thought critically, analytically about the issue. As it says here, you don't simply restate your intro paragraph. Rather, you're offering your final comments on the topic. This is where you're going to let us know why this argument makes sense and should be considered. And that's what you want to do in this one. Again, keep in mind that when you transition from paragraph to paragraph, when you transition into your conclusion, you do not have to signpost with, as you would in a speech. You don't have to say, my first point is, my second point, or third. No, you don't need those. Your paragraph should move smoothly from one to the next to the next. You do not have to have the signposting that you would use in a speech. When you're listening to a speech, you need those points labeled for you because you can't see it. We, when reading an essay, are able to look at the words. We see how it flows. So that means when you get to your conclusion, you never put in conclusion or to summarize or as my final point is. You don't need any of those. We should be able to tell your conclusion because it smoothly wraps up your idea. And so you have this format here. The next one that you have is a blog. I don't use blogs very often, but this one I do because it takes the same structure we just went over. If it will open. It takes the same structure we just went over. And you'll see here it is. And it gives you pictures. It gives you this little image here, which allows the people who are more visually oriented to get an idea. And he literally walks you through what I just went over with the printed argumentative essay format. This one takes you through the same thing. If you notice, here's your introduction. Here are what the other one called the supporting evidence paragraphs. This one he's calling claim 1, 2, and 3 using evidence. Here's the refutation or counter argument, and then the conclusion. So literally it's structured the same way, and it just goes through different ways of how to set it up. So for those of you who are more visual, that's why I include this one. I want to make sure that we have the verbal covered with the argumentative format here, and then that one for you. To keep in mind about the difference between argument and persuasion, one of the key points you need to recognize is that persuasion uses opinion. The tone is going to be charged. It's going to be emotional based. It'll offer a point without any evidence. Cannot do that in argumentative writing. You have to identify the topic, which I have set up for you. You then have to research the topics while you have those articles you need to be reading, which will then lead you to which side to support. You form a thesis stating that position. You show that your view is valid. You don't care if the reader agrees with you. You want the audience to understand that your point makes sense. You have to offer facts, reasons, evidence. Without those, you cannot argue. You have to be logically oriented and structured. You have to acknowledge the other side. You have to allow the evidence in to be presented. to support it, and it's always calm. As I have said before to other classes, when you're writing a formal academic essay, do not use exclamation points. Do not use questions unless you immediately supply the answer to the question. You are to provide statements and discuss in statement form your points. So all your sentences will be declarative sentences ending with periods. So that's under the writing process. Hopefully you had a chance to go through it. Now let's look at your first essay. The overview is very simple. It's just what the learning outcomes are. The next part is where this video will go. Again, MLA formatting guide is Purdue OWL, which shows you how to structure your, let me go back to this one, how to structure your essay, what your essay should look like. The idea of using a legible font, and you generally will use Times New Roman, Courier New, Arial, or Calibri. Those are acceptable fonts. The font will typically be between 10 and 12. If you use Times New Roman, it will be 12. If you use Calibri, it will be 11 because that's the default setting for it. If you use Arial, 11 or 12. If you use Courier New, it'll be 10 because it's a bigger font. If you haven't changed your margins, all your margins on your Word document will be at 1 inch. You create a header for your pages. You only use italics when you're referring to longer works like novels, publications like Times Magazine or Newsweek or any of those publications. We're not worried about endnotes. You don't title your paper. Instead, you have a heading where you put your name, my name, the course, and the date. It's double spaced. You double space. If you set your setting to double space, you hit enter, then you center the title. Do not underline, italicize, or place it in quotation marks. Hit enter again, then go back to the left margin. And you then, it says creating the header, already mentioned before. And this is basically how your paper should look. Where you have your header over here, you have your name, professor name, course, date, have your title centered, and then you go back to the left margin, hit the tab button, because as it says up here, indent the first line of each paragraph. Do not put extra spaces between paragraphs. And so you have all those. So this is how yours should look. And again, when you go to looking at the formatting guide, this is what you're expected to do. Example, the counter argument I have for you here, and you'll see it's not extensive. They give you an example of a body paragraph, not the best body paragraph. They use first of all, which is totally unnecessary. You don't need that. Just start off with your first major point. Allowing beverages in class would dramatically cut hall traffic. There's the topics is. That's how the paragraph should begin. This part contributes nothing at all, and it's not needed. But the counter argument, when it says some may argue that students lack, well, not very well done. Who are the some? How many are some? It's better to say, an opposing argument may be raised that students lack the responsibility to have drinks in class. Or the argument may be raised that students lack. And then that's the acknowledgement of the other side. And that's all it takes. The rest of the paragraph counters that idea, showing how it doesn't hold true. It would be nice if they had a little more statistics here, details. It says students drink soda in the cafeteria all the time. Do they really spend all the time drinking in the cafeteria? No. So that part's a little awkward. It says rarely there is a spill. Is there a spill? Well, again, any proof, evidence on that? So they have quoted the custodial staff. It says maybe one of the custodial staff says, I rarely have to clear up the spill, or it would be nice to have some evidence for that. And then you'll see the conclusion. And notice that this conclusion does not start with in conclusion or finally. It just states the point and develops from there. So that's your counter argument, which is basically here. It just acknowledges in a sentence or two what the other side holds and then counters it with a sound explanation. The next two are example paragraphs, essays, so you can see how one can be developed. The header was taken off because it had the student's name. But you'll see student X, my name, the course, the date. There's a center. Now, one aspect of this one, and I'm going to go ahead and download it and show this to you. One of the first issues, of course, is that extra spaces have gone into between the paragraphs. Well, this is an easy fix. All it takes to do is to mark this. Go here, paragraph, and do this number. And it's gone. So you want to make sure that you've done that. Go to your Word document, click for paragraph setting, and arrange it. I'll show you one other. You can actually set this as a default so that you never have to worry about doing it again. But this one is not well developed. I give this as an example so you can see some of the areas that need attention. It says some people would infer that higher education is the only way to ensure. Others will argue that not every individual would care. So it's looking at the two sides. It says both these points be considered as the next step in life according to Hansen. So it gives your source here. This is what we call interior citation. You don't have to put anything in parentheses because you've named it within the. And this is another point to consider as the price of college, which is why we ask, is it worth the high price? Well, no, you don't have to say why we ask. We're not always asking that. Avoid the references of I, we's, and you's. The formal essay that you are writing is not a conversation. You are not engaged in a conversation with anyone. You are instead presenting information to the audience. The audience will make the decision. You are to present your details in, as I said earlier, declarative fashion, where you are offering evidence, explaining that evidence. You're not engaged in a conversation. So the use of I and we and you is unnecessary unless that's included in quoted material. So again, what it does here is a quote from Joseph Hurley, which makes that part not really needed because it's named here. So you don't have to have it here. But college education costs have risen over 30 years as schools increase. They may want to expand, create new building, so students will have to manage with higher tuition, dorm fees, guarantee the students will receive the right education. So far, this essay has not taken a side. It's acknowledged one side, that to be successful, you need college education. But it also says the other side, not everybody needs that. Never takes a side. So during one's senior years, teachers often push students to go to college, try for greater education. And notice that this is a quote, because it's in quotation marks. But there's no citation as to who said it. There should have been some sort of citation at the end of this sentence here. Now the next part is a summary of details from this source. But the speaker, the source of this quote, is not given. And it needs to be. Notice how quickly it offers the detail and then doesn't go into discussion of it. It says working hard after GED, which you should put, you put the full name first and then the abbreviation of it. So working hard after a general education development, GED, should have been in parentheses in. Can pay off. What can it? How so? If money is concerned, they may be able to apply for scholarships or grants. They may be. Again, no side is taken. No details are offered. College could be worth the money. And here's a quote. And you'll see that it's a long quote. It takes 1, 2, 3, part of 4 lines. That needed to be blocked, similarly to what this one was. if it's going to take more than 3 typed lines, you have to block the information. Again, it says that students fear. Again, that should have been no parentheses. It should have been like that. Students fear that loans have to start being paid right out of school. So, again, it had used a possessive form, not the plural form. Likewise, in formal writing, unless it's in the quoted material, you do not use contractions. So students' loans allow for them to have jobs. Any evidence for that? It says, on the other hand, a student can receive scholarships. How so? It has a comma splice here. It needs a semicolon. However, if someone does receive a scholarship, does not meet the standards that are agreed upon, then that student may be required to pay back the money given. May be required. Can receive. We do not have any definitive position offered, and we do not have any specific details and evidence about this. What about student loans? Why is it difficult? Says debt isn't as immoral as people may think. Well, who thinks that debt is immoral? Points need to be raised. And then the conclusion. Education may have its price, but may be worth the price paid. And again, notice this may be. Is it or is it not? Says, that it may be that prices of certain colleges are too expensive. But to succeed in the modern world, a person may understand that college could possibly be the price worth paying. Well, do we have? Is it definitely or not? There is no position taken in this essay. And it lacks support in a number of areas. There's more details. It needs to be better developed. It does have a works cited page. This one should be here. Because you alphabetize them. They should all be alphabetical order. So it should DCO, Hanson, Hurley, and Linhart. And so that's how it should have looked. So you have to have your sources in alphabetical order. They should look a little bit like this. This was done a few years ago, before the 9th edition of MLA standards. Previously, you could get by with just putting web. Now you have to give the title of the article, which this should have done anyway, and then the URL. And so this is an article that has some issues. Gives you some idea of those, how things can be developed. So that was what that was for. The other example is a little bit better developed. You can see the difference in the two. I'm going to download it also. So you can see how it looks. It also had the issue about extra spaces between paragraphs. No, that's not proper MLA format. And so, again, it's fairly easy fix. You just mark it. Go to paragraphs. And there you go. It's fixed. You'll see, again, a long quote blocked over. When you block a quote, when it's going to take more than 3 typed lines, you tab twice, type up your quoted part, put the period after the quote material, then the parentheses and the source. No period after that. This one offers a little bit better detail. It takes a position. Here's your thesis. College is worth the cost. Takes a definite position because it benefits people in 3 ways. It reflects on social skills as well as intellectual. There are indirect financial benefits, and with a degree there is security. So you have 3 main points allowing for the structure of the essay to be developed. So it starts off about social skills. It doesn't do as much as it could. Since many colleges try to expand these groups as much as possible to satisfy their companionable connections. We're talking about various social groups. Well, what kind of social groups are you talking about? How do colleges expand these groups? You need some support and some evidence here and here. It needs to be examined and explained more. When people pay for college, they benefit more than just having intellectual needs met. Good interpersonal skills, an active social approach, and a sense of community involvement can equip students with a personal resources necessary to making the transition. This comes from the source Newert. It says, not everyone is a social butterfly, but it's more efficient to experiment what people's strengths are before they determine what career, and it should be careers, plural, they want to pursue. Someone is still shy in college, that individual knows not to go to a job that requires dealing with people. Do you notice how Sully has moved off from the topic about enjoying groups and getting to expand your social connections and learning better social skills? It says, career making. It would be better to have some sort of transition here about these social skills that they gain from being involved in organizations will allow them to determine their strengths. If still shy, there needs to be a little bit more connection here. Then certainly talk about making money is not the only benefit. Well, how do we go about making money? We hadn't even talked about money. If you'll notice, this was all talking about social skills. Suddenly it's making money. There's no transition. And it talks about jobs where benefits are more accessible, such as what? The idea about increasing your credit score. People knew about these indirect benefits that they would acquire from certain, more people would go to college to get that degree. Well, details in development. You have Kelsey Lucier, who's used here about opening doors, and the chances they have here. This did not need to be written that way. It could have just been written with the numerals. And then you would need the word dollars. Same thing with this one. Could have been changed to that as well. So, and since after the math, people know how to responsibly spend their money. Notice know how responsibly to spend their money. You don't split the infinitive here. Again, details need to be offered. That about majoring oral surgery, but there are many jobs that have an income to make that look like pocket change. It probably needs to be a little bit better developed there. This one is talking about price, debt amounts. It's the reason people decide against college. Again, it talks about the average debt. Notice how this part here would seem to fit better with this point. By getting into debt and wanting to be able to pay that off, however does it work? Well, that would seem to fit better here. Where it says, well, an oral surgeon is going to make so much money that they'll be able to pay off those loans. This should have been freshmen, plural. They use Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. It puts a question in here, but notice it immediately gives the answer. It doesn't just rely on that question. It's best if you do not use those. It's unnecessary. It says the majority of students would defend themselves with Bill Gates or Steve Jobs because they dropped out of college are now the most successful. Just make the statement all the way across. Make that one sentence. Again, it goes into the conclusion. College is not only about learning, but also about developing where life is going to lead a person. So that works a little bit. And then you have your works cited page here, where you have them get in alphabetical order. You have the title of the article. You have the date it was accessed. And again, this was done 2015. Now you would put the URL, the HTTP ://www. Would go there where this says web. But this gives you an idea of how your essay can look. This is not the topic you're writing about. This is just an example essay. I did not give you an essay over your actual topic because I didn't want you borrowing from that one. So those are examples. What I do have for you are resources for evidence. This is from procon.org. They give you the history, and then they offer you arguments. Always the same number of pro as con. Same number of arguments in favor of the issue as they put opposing the issue, whatever that issue is going to be. They also give you some details here, some specific information. They give you access to quotes. They give you about the history of the topic. So you click on history. They talk about terminology. And we talked earlier about in structuring your essay, you may need a background paragraph to give some details. Well, this is part of that background that they can offer you, that you can read through this and talk about how marijuana wasn't really outlawed until the 1930s. 37 Marijuana Tax Act. You can talk about the details there. Maybe some aspects that you might want to use. So that's procon.org. The next one is from San Antonio Report, from about 3 years ago, talking about Texas economy, and if we change the marijuana laws that we currently have to allow for recreational marijuana, then maybe that could be used. And your topic, and let's go back to this so we look at the topic. Your topic for this assignment, you click here, the essay assignment will pop up. This first 3 paragraphs are all general comments saying things that are expected. The essay is going to reflect your opinion, because it's going to be your opinion that will drive you to want to write about it, but that's not what you write. Rather, you're going to offer a reasoned discussion of the topic where you rely on facts, maybe some personal experience if there's any that you have, some that you know that has direct bearing, real examples that can be discussed and explained. It's going to be a narrowed approach to the topic that you want to look at. We've already narrowed it somewhat for you. You'll utilize MLA format, which shows you the Purdue OWL, where it shows you how that should look. You're going to use a font that's going to be between 10 and 12, like Calibri is set at 11. You're to use a font such as Times New Roman, Calibri, Courier New, or Arial. Folks, you do not use bold. You do not use any other kinds of fonts. These are the acceptable font, with Times New Roman as really the more standard one, but because Microsoft commissioned Calibri several years ago, when they redid Microsoft Office, they commissioned a new font to be made, and they put it at 11, because standard fonts are between 10 and 12, so it defaults to 11. Well, Calibri has become a more common use. But folks, you don't use any other ones. One of these 4, that's it. You're going to discuss the topic in present tense because you're discussing it in the now. You don't use I's, we's, and you's. You don't use I think, I believe, my opinion. To further talk about my view on this subject, we don't need those kinds of expressions. Arguments must have evidence, which is examined and explained. Opinions are not evidence. What you think about it, what you feel about it, doesn't count. It'll motivate you to write, but it's not what you write. You definitely don't use you, because you're not in a conversation with the reader. You're examining the issue and discussing it. Your issue is about recreational use of marijuana. You cannot bring up that marijuana has medical use. What you can discuss is that by allowing recreational use of marijuana to be readily available, anyone can go get it, including people who may need it for medical purposes. But you cannot discuss how marijuana can work to alleviate pain for people suffering from cancer or from other issues along those lines. Because, folks, that's medical use of marijuana. That's not recreational use. Recreational use is different. So you have to be careful about what you're writing. Then, likewise, keep these points in mind as you're writing. Your essay is going to be between 800 to 1,000 words in length, possibly longer. If you're really going to want to do a sound job, you're probably going to need more than that. Again, you are to offer your reasons and support those reasons with evidence. All material should be drawn from the sources. Try to provide those for you. And all that information must be cited, as I was showing you in the example essay. Use AI-generated material. When you submit to turn it in, let me know if there's any AI material. And if there's any at all, folks, the use of AI material will be considered plagiarism. So, the submission of an essay is wholly or partially made up of AI-generated text will constitute a form of academic dishonesty. I'm not going to grade. I'm not going to give credit for what a machine has done. Please keep in mind, Grammarly is an AI. It's even advertising itself now as Grammarly AI, because it will change what you have written. It doesn't ask for permission to do it. It just does it. Well, folks, that means you did not write that part. If you need to check your spelling, get out the dictionary. Look at it that way. So please keep that in mind. And again, your name, my name, English, and the date. That's your heading. Title is centered. Then you go back to the left margin, hit tab, and start working on your introduction. So again, this is the details of what you're looking at. You need to have evidence, at least one piece for every major point. Statistics, facts, a direct quote from someone who's knowledgeable and is considered a credible source. And you want to discuss that evidence, where you explain how it fits the point in that particular paragraph and how it also fits the overall point. So get that explained to it. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at this aspect here. What's offered for you, that's your topic. So when you go back to the sources that are provided for you, you'll see that they're linked to that. Different ones from the last year or so. Link to the library resources. This one, once you do there, you have to log in. And again, it's a standard Canvas login. And then when you log in, EBSCO has changed up a little bit how it looks. But you can download the full text. Get rid of that part. And there it is. It tells you about the details about marijuana. It discusses some key terms that you need to think about. That medical marijuana is one thing, but recreational marijuana is something else. That's what you're looking at. It goes into further details about it, just the different states that have done so, such as Colorado and Washington, legalizing recreational marijuana use for adults. 22 other states by early 2024. 2 territories and Washington, D.C. have done this also. And so you have these details about recreational marijuana and the view that is looked at, the decriminalization. Marijuana on the federal level is still a criminal offense. But you can look at it, it says April 2024, fairly recent comment calling for the reclassifying it, primarily because of medicinal applications, not recreational. This idea of having it as recreational use, it's the idea about some sort of regulation they want to have in place, and so you have the detail there for that one. You can look at points of view references, essentially the same thing. It's just in a slightly different format. It has some better pictures, and the reason I put this one, which the EBSCO is really the same article. It's by the same people. If you look, it's done by the same person, but this one has a citation tool. So you just go down here for MLA, and you can copy this and paste it into your Word Cited page, which is nice to have. Also, if you do not want to spend time reading it, you can actually just listen to it. It's actually supposed to work there, but you can click on Reading Voice if you want in English. There's an error there. It's not one to play today, but you can actually do that. And so you have that one as well. So there are articles up here for you to look at, to consider. If you find some other article about recreational use of marijuana in Texas and the Texas laws, this is the current law that we have. It has not changed any. It says marijuana is illegal because the law classifies as a Schedule I drug. And that aligns with federal regulations. Medical marijuana is different. It's heavily regulated, but it's legal, but not very many have it. What are the penalties for possession? Is it decriminalized? Well, certain counties have decriminalized it so that it's less in charge there. And you also know, as you look at the details here in this one, it gives you some comments, and so you can see the views here. You can click on cannabis laws to look elsewhere. So you do have access to that. Again, this is an article from CBS where it talks a little bit about, again, this was, last year, April 2023. They were looking at House Bill 3652. If you click on it, it'll open that for you. This was, it was left pending in committee, so it never did clear through. So you can see what happened to it. And then if you click on read the first time, it'll show you what bills were read and when. So you have that one a little bit for you, but it goes into, wrong one. It goes into some of the ideas that are proposed here and what can be done, how it can be used. So you have articles there that you can look at, and I'm not sure why it keeps going to that one. So we have these details here for you to look at, articles to look at. I will try to find a few more. At procon.org, you do have quite a bit of information. Again, you can look at this one. That's where we are currently. Here's the history of recreational marijuana. Again, part of that detail there. There's the Procon quote. The idea of the quotes themselves, who says what. You have state-by-state recreational marijuana laws. You'll notice that Texas, we're not part of it. The green, they have both medical and recreational use. This also shows you how to cite this information. Each of the pages, if you go back to the home page, it'll tell you how to cite this. The pro and con quotes, how to cite this page, MLA, and there it is. Again, you copy and paste it. It just has details for you to look at. Again, the comments here for you. So that's a pro-con, has quite a bit there for you to consider. I'm just trying to make sure I've covered all of those. We looked at I can't remember if I clicked on the forks or not. This is one that was proposed, presented about a year ago. It never cleared. This is one that never cleared the House. And it does talk about some of the details about what would be allowed, what would not be allowed. This is, again, as it says here, facing an uphill battle. It did not clear. It just basically, as I showed you earlier, never cleared out of the House. But this offers some views about details about why this could be considered. That a majority of Texans on both sides of the aisle, Democrat, Republican, support cannabis legislation. But notice how it talks about medical cannabis. It's not talking about recreational use. And so that becomes one of the issues that you have to look at. But we do have a percentage that who do approve of the legalizing recreational, but Governor Abbott opposes that. And so you have the details here that are offered too. And so again, article has that one has some facts, some statistics for you to look at. Again, these are about a year old. This one's a little older. This is from the Texas Standard. So it's now about 6 going on 7 years old. 6 years old, I guess. Where it looked at some ideas and how close the United States and Texas especially may be. And it talks about this idea here. So again, something to consider as you're working through it. Again, what you're focusing on is offering a solid discussion of the topic, taking a side on the topic, either for legalizing it for recreational purposes, or saying that Texas does not need to legalize recreational use of marijuana. You have to have your reasons for that. You should have good sound reasoning then for it. And then you use those reasons to help to build the rest of the essay, supported by evidence that you locate. So this is your topic. Oops. That's your topic. You want to make sure that you have a statement of position and thesis, where you have taken a side. You want to make sure you have substantial, solid reasons that make sense to support that position. You want to make sure that you have evidence that you can connect to your point and explain. And you have made use of essay form that is appropriate. So again, these are the points you need to keep in mind. The example essays I have up there for you are not the best ones, but they give you some idea of, one, how they could look, but also what needs to be done to make them better. And that's the point for this one. When you get ready to submit your essay, you click here, and then as it says, click on this box, and that will take you to turn it in. The URL will change to turn it in, and you will follow the instructions. You should have a submit assignment button, sometimes you'll say click for submission, but usually it says submit assignment. Click on it, follow the instructions on how to locate your essay from your computer and upload it from there. If you have questions, this is a professor from the University of Kentucky, and he walks through how to upload your essay. It also shows how to resubmit an essay. If you submit something and then you decide to make a change, well, you should have time. If you do have time, you can go in and resubmit your essay, and he explains how to do that here as well. So again, your focus is going to be on one side or the other. Should Texas legalize the recreational use of marijuana? You either support that Texas should, or you argue that Texas does not need to do so. And then you have to have your reasons. You draw information from your sources to support, and then you explain how that information, that evidence, does support your key points. So again, these are ideas that you need to think about, that you need to look at, that you need to keep in mind as you're working through those. I'll be posting this, and I'll send a note out about the idea, and the video is posted. So we'll get, and I'll put it right up here in this particular area. Again, I'm looking forward to reading your essays. A couple of you have already turned something in, but you go back, read the comments, and then work on revising that and resubmitting it. If you need to find feedback, this is how you do it under the Start Here module. Feedback on essays, how to find, and it shows you how to do so. I had a student ask me today, do you read all the essays? Yes, I do. Not only do I read them, I mark them. I put comments. I offer you specific details within some of the smaller comments, and I'll also type a longer comment, and then I use a rubric to grade your essay. So just keep that in mind, that yes, I do read them, and yes, I do try to get the comments posted as quickly as I can. So again, I'm looking forward to reading your essays. I'll notify you that this has been uploaded and placed into the area for the video discussion as soon as I can.